Um, anyway, so podcast wise, so we had the 2 episodes, and I hope you guys liked the format of me just sort of chatting. I took the advice that Jess gave in the comments of the first one, because she said she's done radio work and she was giving some advice about editing. I was editing the way I edit YouTube. One of the things I edit on YouTube is I try and get out all the snarfly, like, breathing and like the mouth noises. You guys know how I feel about mouth noises. And, the long pauses where I'm like, not actually, where I'm just sort of like sitting there like, what in the hell am I supposed to write in my planner now or whatever. So I try and do that. But when I was editing the podcast, I was trying to cut it out to like make it, but she said that leaving those pauses in, not necessarily like long pauses, but like the breaths and things like that, make it feel like you're listening to someone talk rather than like feel like you're rushed through it. So I'm listening to her, and I haven't shown these to Jesse. He hasn't listened to them, and he's an audio engineer. Maybe part of the reason I haven't shown him yet or made him listen is because I'm afraid of what he's going to say. So like, well, you really suck at this,
I didn't think you suck.
No, they're really good.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you liked it. So I have
being you, which is all I ever want from you anyway.
Well, I'm very good at being me. I have the most experience at being me than anything else I have experience with. So
But I think even though you, as you say, you are curating a bit, I think you curate a lot less than some of the other people. I have one friend who is big on the lettering and bullet journaling stuff, and she curates everything, and she's always bright and cheerful and chirpy, and I want to strangle her.
good vibes. Good vibes only. So
I'd much rather have you being real than have someone being bright and chirpy all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, I can be bright and chirpy, but I'm not always bright and chirpy. So the interviews I'm starting to line up, I'm sticking. So I guess I can tell you guys some of them that I have talked to who have said yes, even though we haven't necessarily nailed in the date yet. So, but don't tell anybody. I mean, this is going to the other patrons in this level, but keep this at the $15 plus patron level. So Kristen Damien is going to be one of them. And I want to talk to her about how as a well-known shop owner who is also known for being one of the most professional of the shop owners in the planner community, somebody who always has good customer service and puts a very professional front forward, while you still get the sense that you're talking to her. You're not talking to a business or someone who just wants your money. Like, she's really good at balancing that. And I want to talk to her about like what that feels like to have to balance that, like kind of how I gave my thought process of what I choose to put online and how I choose to put it on there. I kind of want to talk to her about that. Like how do you decide how often to do salesy things, like not like sales, she doesn't do a lot of those, but how often to do like salesy posts versus or personal posts, like when she shows her dogs, or, but also like, how do you cope with having to keep the professional face on basically in all of your interactions online with this community while still being a very interactive member of the community? But like, it can be very difficult sometimes to I hold back a lot less than she does. I say a lot of what I feel about a lot of things. And I know that she has to play things really carefully so that she doesn't say something that will get her, make a problem because she's a shop owner and she wants to be respectful and professional. But I'm not somebody who is good at moderating what I say, and she is. And I want to explore that. I want to explore like how she does it and what that feels like.
She is also too like exactly the same person in person that she is online.
Yes, like she is.
She's not while she's careful with what she says, she's still very true to herself.
Everything you see from her is her. You may not see all of her, but you see everything of her. There's nothing fake or forced. And I think that would be really interesting to talk about as somebody who has managed to build such a strong business in our community where it's so personal,
Yeah.
So she's one of them. Another person I'm going to be talking to has a knitting channel with over 100,000 subscribers. And she has a very compelling story as to why she started knitting. It has to do with postpartum depression and things like that.
Oh, wow.
But it's hard for her to really talk about that story a lot while she's because when you're showing people how to knit, you're showing like specific things, and it's not like lettering where you're like, draw it like this, blah, 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 ramble. Like, you got to pay attention to what you're doing or you're going to miss something. So I want to talk to her about ways that because I know she's trying to incorporate her storytelling more into what she's doing, but also like she has a big community. She's got like an almost 20,000 person Facebook group and like this big channel. And how does she choose what it is of her family she allows to come into her channel that has nothing to do with family vlogging, nothing to do with any of that? It's specifically a tutorial channel, but she tries to infuse some of her life into it. And how do you know where to stop? And that same balance I talked about how like there's the things that will get likes and engagement, and there's the things I like to post. And then where's that spot in between where the stuff I'm posting is satisfying to me, but also pushing me in the algorithm. If I only post what I like, but I don't think about that, then I may not go forward. But if I only post what the algorithm's going to like, but I don't like any of it, it's going to suck my soul and I don't want to do it anymore, So I'll talk to her kind of about that because she's on a bigger scale and in a community that I'm not in, even though I've tried it before. It's not really my thing. So I'm really curious to see the parallels between the things she does in her community and what do we see in the planner community,
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me. And then I'm likely going to be doing a conversation with Mari and Michelle together about running Patreons and what that's like.
Cool.
Yeah, I've got a whole list of other people I'm starting to look at too. So I'm another person I've got coming who I'm not going to name yet, but she's more than twice as big as I am in the lettering world, but she reminds me of me in some ways. And I think she's trying to incorporate more of that into her life to be more of herself rather than the whole good vibes, do all the things, all the perky all the time. And I'm really excited to talk to her about it because I think she's going to have some shit to say. So like, I want to talk to the people who are going to be like, yeah, it's bullshit that everything's so curated all the time, but you got to kind of be curated to be able to grow. And how do you deal with being curated while at the same time knowing that you don't want to only be the perfectness, So that's kind of what I'm looking at for the next. We're trying to get the first 8 total episodes planned out before we launch on the 23rd. So get 3 going, 3 available on the 23rd when I launch, and then having the rest of them be either scheduled, like interviewed and scheduled, or in the can. Like I know what they're going to be, and then get another group of them after that. Maybe not fully planned, but at least started, if that makes sense. So that's what we're looking at. While still being flexible enough to be able to stop, drop, and if something happens, be able to just do a solo episode and talk about what thing just happened, something that's relevant. I don't know what that would be necessarily. Like I'm probably going to talk for a little while after Go Wild about stuff we hear there from people. Like I'm going to try, I'll give you guys the heads up. I'm going to be doing my damnedest at Go Wild to be securing interviews with some of the other speakers there. Like I want to walk away from there knowing that Whitney English is going to be on my podcast. Because I think she would be an ideal guest. For those of you who haven't heard Whitney English before, she is so real. Like, yeah. So I want to get her. Whitney English, of the people there's more than those people, but the specific people I want to be able to get onto the podcast are Whitney English and Diane Reevely. Because Diane Reevely, I'd be just sitting there the whole time like, so, did you know how awesome you are? Because I think you're really awesome. I love you. I think you're great. Like, that's going to be like, but I love how if you guys have never watched any of Diane Reevely's videos that she's done with Ranger, where she goes and demonstrates how to use her products, she's all covered in ink and paint, and she's hella British, and she's got red hair and her glasses and her little teacup that she drinks out of. And then she goes, and she doesn't cuss, but it like, she's got that like salty, like dripping with salt kind of personality while she's like making her mixed media and then drinks her tea and then makes her mixed media. She's all Brit, and I'm just like, I love you. Like if you took her and Jenna Marbles and like put them in a blender, like that's who I aspire to be. So
speaking of someone who does their own hair color.
Yeah. I love her so much. I'm so sad her hamster died. Oh my God.
I know.
When I heard that, I was like, no, Adward. That's such a great name, and now you're dead. But her podcast, if you never listened to it, they talk about some random stuff. Okay. They do some random things, but when you listen to their podcast about YouTube and YouTube's community or like freedom of speech and things like that, like they get really deep about it. And she's super smart. And like people don't always see that in her videos, but like her podcast with Julian I love it. Like they're more serious. Yeah. Her last one, I actually highly recommend it. It's interesting. The second half, they do something silly like play some game, but the first half, they're talking about the comments. And this makes me think of the podcast I'm doing because this hits on a lot of things. They talked about the comments that you get when you're somebody who has a following on the internet and how you get people who like love you and you get those comments, but then you get the bad comments and it only takes one. And they were talking about how when their hamster died and they love their animals, like they do so much for their animals. And when their hamster died, people started posting these PETA articles about ways that you might not be taking care of your hamster correctly, like trying to be nice, but inferring that their hamster died because they
weren't taking proper care of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Except that he was old and hamsters have a 2-year life cycle. Like that's, hey, Kim, like hamsters have a 2-year life. We're recording, by the way, Kim, because we're sort of talking about the podcast. So if you don't want your face showing on the recording, just them giving you the heads up. But yeah, so they were getting these and it was hurtful to them. And then because Julian's friend had just died and he was in his vlog, it was showing him making dinner or something. Somebody in the comments was like, well, that was a short grieving period. You know, it's like comments like that where that like sticks with you. And then she goes on a long conversation about how people were speculating as to whether or not she's pregnant and how that doesn't hurt her because she's like, whatever, that's kind of a rude thing to speculate about. But she's not trying to have a baby right now, but she's like, but if you were suffering from infertility or if you had just had a miscarriage or if something had happened and these people are speculating about whether or not you're pregnant, like that's just, it's mean. Like, why do that? And she was talking about how that's just something that seems to happen a lot. And like for me, with my kidneys sticking out so far, I had somebody at my kids' school, their old school. I hadn't been in there in a while and I came in and she asked me, oh, I didn't know you were pregnant, this person who works there. And I was like, oh, I'm not. It's just my kidneys. And it kind of hurt my feelings, but not too much. Because I mean, I know I got like pregnant with kidney babies, but like, you know, I told the kids, I was like, you never, ever, ever assume. I don't care if the baby is falling out. I don't care if you can see the crown. You never ask someone or tell someone, you never assume they're pregnant and never ask. Never. Let them tell you. I don't care if they have a shirt that says baby on board and you can see the little handprints like underneath the skin going like this. You still don't say anything. Like, no, like, because if like when I had Katie, I had the pregnant belly afterwards. Like, you know, you have a baby, you still look like 6 months pregnant, but you're all squishy and kind of like not firm anymore. And I was excited because I had gotten my driver's license the week before I had her because I hadn't driven before. And I was like, there was no way I was going to take the bus and drive her around town. So I still had the pregnant belly, but I was taking her into the store where I worked, the Safeway I worked at, to show the baby off because it was like 3 days later. I'm like, I got a driver's license. I got a new baby. I'm hitting the town. So like I went out. You know, who cares if people breathe on her? Doesn't matter, right? She's fine. But so I go out there and somebody asked me, some person who didn't work with me, saw me with a brand new baby in the carrier, in the cart, asked me when I was due. And I like fell apart. I was like, I had a baby, but I'm gonna look like I'm pregnant forever. Like, you know, that's the feeling you have. And so I found it very insightful, this Jenna and Julian podcast where they talked. And what I loved was that while she was talking about some of these situations that happen to women about how people like assume you're pregnant or start questioning whether you might be pregnant and all that. And she was talking about these things that are unique to like women, that he was like nodding, like making agreement with her, but not trying to talk over her. And that was so nice. It was so nice. I was like, Julian, she's training you right. So
Yet I was in my 20s and I was living across the street from a Chinese restaurant. And I walked in one day, and the youngest of their children put his hand on my tummy and said, "Baby."
And you were like, oh,
God.
no. Yeah. It sucks. And like,
You'll know I was just that. But
yeah.
saying baby.
So it's
heartbreaking.
Yeah. And like for people, and one of the things she brought up was for people who are like suffering from infertility and who may have had a miscarriage, sometimes you still look pregnant. Like if it's upsetting for people who just happen to have like a big belly like I do, and then you have somebody who's like doubly like upset because of something, like
that they can't control.
It sucks. It's never a good look. It's never a good look. Like so I told my kids, I was like, just don't. Just say no.
Yeah, just don't.
You become grown-ups. My opinions on just saying no to things like marijuana, I'm not going to tell you now, but like, let's just put it this way. We're not going to worry about that right now. But when it comes to asking someone if they're pregnant or assuming they're pregnant, just say no. It's like the DARE campaign, except for people, for how you respond to someone you think might be pregnant. Just
for being a decent human being.
Yeah, just don't be a jerk. Don't be, oh, there's a baby. Oh, I've already been looking. We're looking at Taylor's baby, and now there's another baby. Oh, babies are so cute. I'm so glad I don't have any. They are so cute.
Me too. Me too.
But I love other people's babies. OPB, other people's babies. Yep. I love. I'm down with OPB. I'm not down with babies for me. That's my poem for the day. But yeah, so I'm just excited to be able to talk. I'm really excited to be able to talk about some real shit on this podcast. Like I think maybe the thing I want the most out of it is to be able to infuse some real shit into like the noise of like the perfect shit, like I like looking at some of the perfect shit as long as I keep perspective on it. I love looking at beautiful things, happy things, well-lit things. I love looking at all of that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we need to never filter pictures. What I am saying is that if I don't remember that that's what that is filtered, if you get so used to seeing it that you start to like think that, oh, this is what somebody's real life is like, then that's when I start to absorb things and start to get like in my head and depressed about it and whatever. And I ain't got time for that. Nobody does. So that's what I want to talk about. And I think that it's going to be really fun. And everybody I've talked to so far about potentially being guests or about the podcast in general has seemed to really think that the concept is an interesting one. And I don't know if there's another podcast that I haven't found one that's exactly like that yet. I don't know what for those of you, okay, I have an assignment for some of you. For those of you who like to listen to podcasts, what category should I categorize this in? Because I don't know. I've never once used the categories on the podcast thing. I've always found podcasts based on recommendations. So
yeah, same here. It's only based on recommendations for me, or I like search out a specific title.
So I have no idea. Like, let's look look at the categories then, shall we? And see what they are. All categories. So they're hella generic. Like, I don't know if there's like subcategories under them. In iTunes, if you go to, I don't know if you can see that. If you go to categories, it gives you the categories, but then when you click on it, it just throws up the new and noteworthy and the what's hot and the all podcasts. There's no like, it doesn't seem like there's subcategories. It seems like there's just big categories, like generic ones. New and noteworthy would be fun. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that. It depends on how many people we get downloading it, which is why I'm going to try and have 3 podcasts available when it launches so that there's more than one to download at a time at the beginning. But I'm not necessarily aiming for that. But okay, so here's the categories. Let's see which ones we think might be potential because I have no idea. There's arts. That could be a contender, potentially.
Yeah.
Business, I suppose that could be a contender too, but in sort of a esoteric way. Comedy, well, I think I'm funny, and I am impressed with my sense of humor. However, I don't think this is a comedy podcast. Education, what does that mean? In like, are you people who are educators? Like, is it like teacher podcasts or is it podcasts that teach you something? Like,
I listen to BBC Inside Science. I think that one comes under education. and they like pick different topics and sciencey topics, and you learn a little bit about it, and they get people in who are experts on that to like interview them.
Yeah.
So I think that's under education, but again, I do them by name, so I'm not sure about the categories.
Yeah. Most of these look like they're teaching about all sorts of different things. Like here's one about one of these new and noteworthy is called How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And one of them is
people
called,
that need to listen to that.
one is called Please Finish Your Book. It's not about reading because the tagline is authors inspiring future authors. So I think they mean finish the writing your book, not please finish reading that book on your nightstand. Although I feel like I think I could handle, I should listen to a podcast like that.
I was about to say.
Many unfinished books. Not written books, just ones I haven't finished reading yet. Yeah, so that's education. Games and hobbies, that might be one, although everything that's in here seems
it's to like games,
like geeky and like geeky and like comic books and things like that.
I think the knitting ones I listen to go under there as well, under the hobbies side.
Yeah.
Rather than arts?
Yeah, I think they're under hobbies.
Then maybe that's where it should live.
When I just looked and I saw that the one that said please finish your book is under education, but it's also under arts, under new and noteworthy. So maybe
you could cross.
You can do both. Do arts and hobbies.
Yeah.
I haven't fully looked into, like, I haven't gotten to the point of being ready to get the host and get like through like learning how to do the tags and the titles and the metadata for the podcast. But so I don't know what the process is. I thought you were supposed to be able to pick you were supposed to suggest what category you're in, but maybe iTunes also like looks at all the stuff having to do with your podcast and decides where they think it should go. You know, maybe that's how it is. I don't know. Okay. Government and organizations. Okay.
No.
No,
That's
thank
a no.
you. Health. I mean, mental health, but no, I don't think so either. Kids and family. I think my podcast is going to be explicit. I'm not intending to go into it and be all Andrew Dice Clay all over it, but like there's going to be cuss words, and I know that they want you. From what the Planner Girl Chatter podcast told me, they told me that you have to, if you can't just mark one episode as explicit, you have to mark the whole podcast as explicit if you think that there's going to be language in it. So that's going to be happening, but whatever. Okay. Music, no. Ooh. Okay, sorry. Distracted. News and politics, religion and spirituality, science and medicine. I'm pretty sure all of these are not it. Society and culture. That might be it.
But what else is in there?
I don't know. Let's find out. Optimal Finance Daily. Here's one about parenting abroad. Mindful living. Oh, I bet I would like that one. Looking. There's one called Love Rice. What does that mean? Love Rice is the place where we honor our messy hair and our messy hearts. What?
Okay.
None of us can escape the hard stuff of life, but all of us can bloom. Oh, I have no idea what that's actually supposed to be about. Like that was basically like, what is it like when they say like the long duck walks alone at midnight and the fire burns only when the rain stops.
Sounds like a fortune.
That's my podcast tagline right there. Oh, Ingrid Nilsson's podcast is in here. This American Life is in Society and Culture. Hardcore History. Alec Baldwin has a podcast? I didn't know that.
There are a lot of people that you'd be surprised have podcasts.
Lore is in Society and Culture, and that's a good podcast. Okay. Anyway, let's move forward. Sports and recreation, no. Technology. I mean, you could sort of think that, but not really. It's like a bunch of social media marketing, which actually in some ways I think could be like in the weird, like, what is it from Stranger Things, the upside down? The upside down of social media marketing is what I'm going to be talking about. Like there's social media marketing, and then there's what happens when you're not doing that. You know, like.
Do you listen to the Unpodcast? Cindy?
No, but that
You
sounds
would,
awesome.
You would like it. They're Canadian and they're like content marketers, and they talk about how like everyone's doing it wrong. They're pretty cool. You'd like them. I feel like they'd be people you'd hang out with in real life.
Maybe that's who I should be listening to. Yeah, in podcast. I found one in technology called Strictly Game Boy. Join Brian and Clay each week as they chat about a single game from the beloved handheld console. Yeah. Okay. And then the last one is TV and film, which
They're a TV show we don't know about, Cindy.
no. I wonder if the what is it, the Babysitters Club? I wonder if that's under this one, even though it's books, because that one's awesome. If you've never heard that one, the Babysitters Club is an excellent podcast. It's these two dudes reading the Babysitters Club books and giving these like serious critiques of them, talking about the themes and everything in the Babysitters Club books. And their theme song's this little guitar going like, "It's the Babysitters Club." Like, it's really awesome. I love the Babysitters Club growing up. So I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Now we just need to get a couple dudes doing this with VC Andrews and I will be set. Like,
Yes.
Sweet Valley High. We'll get some Sweet Valley High love in there, and my childhood will be taken over by dudes trying to understand them. Like, yeah. So I don't know. I think my top categories are probably arts, games and hobbies, and maybe society and culture, maybe business.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like those are the four that I think could
The triangulation of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's a thought. So for people who are watching this on the replay also, if you can think of what's your thought process on what category, and if you don't know where to find them, if you go into iTunes, if that's what you use, I don't know how to do it with another app. If you go into iTunes and you go to browse at the bottom, you can pick all categories and it'll list the categories there. But yeah. Ooh, conversations with people who hate me. That sounds like an online video creator calls some of the folks who wrote him hateful messages to ask one question. Why? The results are sometimes awkward, often political, and always fascinating. I want to listen to that. I'm subscribing to this. That sounds cool. I want to listen to somebody asking people why they left hateful comments on there. Because if I had the phone number of everybody who said my language stuff, I would call them and be like, "So why are you coming at me, bro? Like, what's going on in your life? Like, what?"
Well, if you ever do that, you need to record it.
Like the one that I got last week where they said, "You have big nose." Like, what? Like, I mean, yes, you're not wrong. But like, that doesn't hurt my feelings. You're stating a fact. You know, like, or the one who told me why you can't speak well. Oh,
Why you can't type well.
Why you can't speak well. It's okay. Anyway, you guys, I'm going to wrap this up so I can go make some dinner. But thank you for listening to this. I'm going to hope to get one more podcast up this week for you guys to listen to. That's the goal. And as soon as I get the rest of the editorial calendar nailed down for it, I'll start sharing more secrets and stuff about that. But we're going to be working to get that. I'll try and show you on Lens this week. I've been really bad at using that, about what I'm doing in terms of getting the behind the scenes. Jesse's getting me using Asana to get this all figured out while he helps me, because that's how he works. And honestly, between trying to figure this out and trying to figure the bullet planner out, I'm like, just please tell me what to do right now, because my brain feels like it's going to start leaking out my ears and I don't know what's happening. Although I'm feeling better about the bullet planner right now. Putting the washi tape in it.
Again, saying something that sounds like you're trying to convince yourself it's going to be okay.
It's so much better though, but you're right. Yeah.
Really pretty.
So we'll see what happens next week when I try Erin Condren style. The one thing that might keep me going for a third week on it is that there's somebody online who has been on my ass to do a watercolor, like a full-blown watercolor spread. And I don't know if I want to do that to either like my Erin Condren or my regular bullet journal. I don't know if I want to put that much water. So I might blow this bullet journal out by being like, I'm going to watercolor the crap out of it. We're going to see what happens. You know, like, why not? So I don't know. I'm fine though. I'm getting there. Like I said at the beginning of this, I had a big win today. I was able to check something off my church list that's been on my mind. And now tomorrow I have to go tell the congregation about it, which I'm not excited about, even though it's not bad. It's just, I don't want to get up and be like, oh, here's some information. Ask me your questions. We have to buy our, I guess I'll tell you this before I sign off. Per our bylaws, if we're going to have a congregational meeting where we have to vote on something, then there has to be a meeting 2 weeks ahead of time to tell people about what they're going to be voting on so that they can offer feedback and ask questions. The one thing we're voting on the 22nd is the ministerial search committee. The board has taken feedback from the congregation, has put together a committee, a balanced committee of people to look for our next minister, and now the congregation needs to endorse them. So tomorrow I have to announce this committee and then hear their responses. And while I'm pretty sure we did a good job and they're not going to be like, oh, this motherfucker suck, but like, you never know. When you have a congregation who one of our like stated principles is we honor the democratic process and everybody has a voice. Everybody uses their voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, can we have a feedback box? I don't want to stand up here and have you guys yell at me. I don't think they're going to, but you never know. So once I get through tomorrow, I'll be feeling a lot better, I think, at least about, because then once we get to the 22nd and then all that's left after enabling that ministerial search committee is to get the current minister's contract re-upped and get the budget taken care of, and we're smooth sailing and we're good to go. And then I'm off the board. I hope I didn't just jinx myself. Knock on wood.
Can they convince you to stay? Are they going to try?
No, they can't. I'm at the end of my 3-year term. They have board
see,
members.
you're lucky.
Yeah. So
I was our treasurer. They tried to convince me. I said, nope, leaving.
yeah, no, we have 3-year term limits, and once your term is up, you can't be back on the board for at least a year. So, yeah, no, I can't. And I'm like, fuck yeah, because I need to. And I told Jesse, I'm taking a couple months off of picking up new commitments so that I can reassess what my life looks like and what marching band is going to look like. And then I will know what time I have to devote. Because, someone coming out of leadership is like fucking easy pickings for people who are like, they can be the chair of this committee because it's not as bad as being president,
Yep.
So I'm trying to avoid that, even though I'm pretty sure I know I'm probably going to be taking over the social justice committee because the person who's been running it has been running it for a few years, and she and I have talked about how she wants me to be in charge of it now so she can focus on the one big social justice project she's the most passionate about. So I don't know yet, but we'll see. I'm not going to have the excuse that I'm president. You all have to leave me alone and not ask me to be part of your committees anymore. I'm not going to have that excuse. So my there's a couple of month time period where people are going to be nice and leave me alone, and I need to take advantage of that. So anyway, you guys have a good rest of your evening, and I will talk to you later.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Um,